Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and tonight we're talking here at 11:20 p.m. Eastern Time, live from Columbus, Ohio. We are talking Monday Night Football. Chiefs had a pretty resounding 34-20 victory over the Baltimore Ravens. After I get through some of the snaps, fantasy football takeaways from the game, and just general thoughts, we are going to go over some waiver wire stuff to capitalize on some of the injuries from Week 3 and just new workload situations that have revealed itself. So first starting off with this game, again, great win for the Chiefs. They jumped all over the Ravens, and we haven't seen Lamar Jackson have to play from behind a lot. Usually still manages to put up big time fantasy points when he does, as we saw in the AFC divisional round last year, but wasn't quite his night here. And looking at the overall passing numbers for Lamar, it's going to make a lot of these trolls online that are always shouting out about him being a running back pretty happy. I mean, Lamar went ahead and went 15 for 28 for just 97 yards and a touchdown. Now, as is often the case, the stats just don't tell the whole story sometimes. You got to watch the good old film as well, and, could have been a lot bigger game. Now, Lamar did not help his own cause on a lot of that. I mean, Marquise Brown could have had, potential 100 yards and 2 extra touchdowns just with what was going on there. Beat his man badly twice off the line of scrimmage. Lamar failed to put the ball out in front of him. I mean, even if they weren't going to be touchdowns, still a situation where it could have had an extra 80 yards or so. So that was unfortunate. But on the other side of things, Mark Andrews had one big 25, 30-yard drop down the seam, and then another potential touchdown in the end zone that Lamar put on him, but he was not able to come down with. So, it certainly wasn't the best game from Lamar, and just seemed really erratic at times back there, where maybe if it was just their 5-wide formation, because I know there was a bunch of stats in preseason about just how Lamar and this Ravens offense and 5 wide receivers would just be way more efficient than anyone else because of the threat Lamar is as a true running back. Even when you have 5 wide receivers out there, you still got to respect the run. But seeing on a few occasions where the Chiefs were sending funky blitzes and still only rushing 4 guys but managing to get one free, and you had Lamar pretty much just taking off in a dead sprint from the snap. So just didn't quite have a good rhythm in the passing game all night long, and that's what happened, with only 97 yards. So did have 2 turnover-worthy plays thrown in there as well, and official count on that per PFF was 5 drops on the evening for the Ravens pass catchers. So again, it wasn't Lamar's best game. I'm not trying to say that the guy deserves credit in this loss, but certainly didn't get the help we usually see him get. As is the case though, in Lamar's bad games, still not all that bad in fantasy football land. 8 carries, 84 yards, no scores on the ground, continuing to look like one of the fastest players on the field more time than not. Sticking with this Ravens running game, it's just a mess here kind of week to week with this, mini committee they do have going on here in Baltimore. Last year it was pretty much Ingram and Gus Edwards, a little bit of Justice Hill here and there, but it was definitely more of a Mark Ingram as a 50% plus snap guy. And this year, we're just not quite seeing that same system. J.K. Dobbins played 22 snaps out there. Mark Ingram just 15 snaps, and Gus Edwards 12 snaps. So you would think, okay, great, J.K. Dobbins is looking like the leader in there. But really, J.K. Dobbins was just being used as their 2-minute back, which is cool. But look, I don't think we're going to see too many games this year when, the Ravens are going to be trailing by multiple scores throughout. And Mark Ingram did still have 7 carries. Gus Edwards had 4. Dobbins only had that 1 rush attempt, and credit to Dobbins for making some great plays in the passing game, late in the game in particular. When they get him the ball in space, he can do a lot with it, and he ended up making the most of his 4 targets, caught all all 4 of his targets for 38 yards with 19 of those coming after the catch. So he looks great when they get the ball to him in the open field. But again, it's just one of these things where we've seen more weeks than not, Lamar Jackson isn't targeting his running backs a ton, and it's just going to be hard for him to leap Mark and even Gus in this rush attempt just pecking order at the moment. So J.K. Dobbins 2021 is going to be great once Mark Ingram probably moves on, doesn't get a contract extension with Baltimore. Maybe he does, and I'm wrong, but that's the time I think that dynasty investors and redraft people should be aiming for. I'm not saying he won't have useful weeks. This offense is probably going to be a top 5 scoring unit, but just not sure if we're going to see, that sort of high end RB2 value we were hoping for in year 1. Mark Ingram, look, it's hard for anyone in this offense in this sort of game where Lamar has to throw a little more than usual, and he's always taking off as well. So I think Ingram's going to continue to be around that RB2 borderline upside RB3 potential. But, last year when he scored those 15 touchdowns and, really did look like he had plenty of gas left in the tank. Not saying he looks bad out there, but it's just a situation where we are seeing Gus and Dobbins eat into it enough where now Mark's workload is even guaranteed on a week-to-week basis. So, and shout out to Gus Edwards. It's not like he's this annoying player out there that shouldn't be getting these touches. I mean, going into this game, he was second in the NFL in yards after contact per rush. So he's been playing well, and his whole career he's been a really efficient back. And we saw that tonight. He busted a really long run on one of his 4 carries, ended up getting 39 yards on those attempts. So credit to Gus for doing his thing, but it's a good real life problem when you have these 3 good backs, but not quite as much in fantasy land. With the wide receivers, mentioned with Marquise Brown, I mean, could have had 2 potential deep touchdowns, if not the touchdowns, at least long plays. And it just wasn't great for him. And we've seen him do better this year with Lamar. It's not like that, this was just a same old after 3 weeks. They really were showing a lot better chemistry early on. Unfortunately tonight, 2 catches for 13 yards on 6 targets. We were hoping that maybe these sort of bust games would be out of their system in the year 2, together, but it's looking like that could still be a little bit of a problem in this run first offense. And, Lamar is going to have better days. I mean, come on, it's not like we've seen Lamar just consistently fail to throw the ball like this in their losses. I mean, hell, against the Titans when they lost in the AFC divisional round, that was another game where we just had an absurd amount of drops throughout the entire time, and not even to mention just some of the struggles the Titans had stopping them, just between the 20-yard lines. I mean, Lamar still put up, I believe, over 500 total yards on his own that game. I understand this one wasn't great, and it's prime time, big spot, everyone's talking about it, but there are going to be much better days ahead for this Ravens offense. Same goes for Mark Andrews. I mean, look, he's not going to drop these sort of touchdowns, and Nick Boyle ended up being the one that did catch the lone touchdown from Lamar. So Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews are going to have better days. I do think this sort of performance, it is a sign that, hey, it is a somewhat crowded offense, and we shouldn't be expecting too much from Miles Boykin or Devin Duvernay. Although Duvernay, I mean, shout out to him, like nice kick return touchdown. No real jukes. I mean, we didn't make many guys miss out there. He just more or less used his speed, hit the open gap, and took it to the house, showing off that 4.4 speed he hit at the combine. So Ravens got some playmakers out there. We know Willie Snead's always going to be getting a few looks per game as well. Maybe we'll even see Justice Hill eventually or someone else added to the fold. But I still think it's going to be Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, and obviously Lamar Jackson moving forward. I'm still treating those guys as starts and more matchups than not. And then on to the victors side of the ball, Kansas City Chiefs. I think the biggest takeaway from this is just the overall play calling, and this is what really makes the Mahomes experience so unfair. And you look at his numbers over these past few years and the chances he's been taking, and we think of him as just this complete gunslinger. The guy can throw the ball out of the football stadium. He must be throwing it deep all the time. And he certainly doesn't have a Drew Brees deep ball rate or anything like that. But it's also a situation where he doesn't even have to force the ball into tight windows. He's routinely ranked in the bottom half of quarterbacks in PFF's database in percentage of passes into tight windows because, 1, he's smart enough to take what's there, and 2, the play calling and the talent on this team are so good that he doesn't even have to try this craziness. So, just some of the things they did this game, with some of the trick plays, the wildcat reverse of Mahomes, he ended up just dumping it off, but they were looking for a big one. He had a funky underhand shovel pass to Anthony Sherman, their fullback, for a touchdown. They ended up, capping off the scoring with a touchdown pass to a tackle-eligible Eric Fisher. So, you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Tyree Kill, you have Travis Kelsey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, all this talent all over the field, and the offensive coaches are still giving them that schematic advantage that you just don't see elsewhere. So it truly is an embarrassment of riches in Kansas City from both the personnel and the coaching departments. And you absolutely love to see it if you're a Chiefs fan and or investing in this offense. Because, just more and more numbers being put up. This was easily Mahomes' best game of the season. It was good to see after, week 1, strong performance against the Texans, but not just the blowout performance we're kind of used to seeing. Obviously struggled a little bit against the Chargers, but not tonight. 31 for 42, 385 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, racked up 3 big-time throws per PFF's advanced metrics, and averaging 9.2 yards per attempt. And it was like any time the Ravens did finally get him the third down in a situation where, okay, maybe they're going to get him off the field. No, Mahomes was able to scramble and make things happen there. 4 rush attempts for 26 yards and a score. It's unfair that this guy is that good when the play breaks down, because truly not a weakness to his game. And, this is why, at least I am. I know I'm partial to off-script quarterbacks. I mean, definitely, one of those guys that drank the Johnny Manziel NFL Kool-Aid back in the day. But it's just because you think, okay, if someone can be that good, off script and the thing breaks down, can they maybe learn to operate inside the offense as well? And Mahomes, I think, is the best example of that in the entire league right now. Looking at the running back situation, Clyde Edwards-Helaire continues to, be the guy, but it's not like he's dominating this backfield to just a ridiculous extent. 44 snaps. Darrell Williams was at 14. Darwin Thompson also at 6. So that's a solid 70% snap rate, and when we're getting that inside the Kansas City offense, that's fantastic. So it's not a huge problem or anything like that. And he still was the lead bell cow in terms of just rushing attempts and touches, which is ultimately what matters. So I know personally sometimes I pay a little too much attention to the snaps. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting 20 rush attempts, Darwin and Darrell only 2 each. I mean, he is the guy. And Clyde, even though it wasn't a spectacular performance on the stat sheet, 20 carries, 64 yards, no scores on the ground. And then he had 5 catches for 70 yards through the air. So it wasn't huge, and wasn't able to find the end zone on the evening. But he had a spin move on this one catch he had that was filthy. Continues to really show off some really just awesome missed tackle juice. I haven't calculated who the leader was in week 3 forced missed tackles, but I believe Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he was up there in week 1. I do think it was Josh Jacobs. And then in week 2, we had Austin Eckler. So will be a fun thing to keep an eye on. I know broken tackles don't get you fantasy points, but I do think they are a sign of who is, truly a good player and capable of still balling out when the situation isn't awesome and who isn't. And it is trending towards Clyde Edwards-Helaire being one of those players where even when the game script isn't great, he can still put up plenty of numbers. So good game by him. And again, that spin move was just nasty, reminiscent of the one he had against Bama last year. Again, Darwin Thompson, Darrell Williams, pretty much afterthoughts. Darwin had a fumble, and it seemed like we did see a little bit more of Darrell later. But if something does happen to Clyde, I don't think we're going to see, any one of these backs take over. Okay, if it's a 2-back committee in Kansas City, we're still going to pay attention to fantasy, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where, you're going to be burning half your fab or anything like that. Moving on to receivers, Tyree Kill had a really good game. They, first play of the game, they got him a reverse. Obviously, they want to get him involved. 5 catches, 77 yards, and a score. The touchdown was beautiful, and he is so fast. Fastest player in the NFL, I think anyone would pretty much say, but his deep ball tracking and contested catchability is so underrated. And, anytime they get that offsides and Mahomes able to keep the play going, he's chucking downfield to Tyreek, and just countless times where he's able to come back to the ball, jump up, and make that one-on-one contested catch. So again, it's unfair what he can do just with speed and agility on his own, but truly is particularly unfair when you pair up this dude with Mahomes. So Sami Watkins was not all that involved. No, he did get out there and play. And okay, looking at the stats, I guess I underestimated it. Caught 7 of 8 targets for 62 yards, did not find the end zone. He did get stopped like the 1-yard line, but really the star of the show, surprisingly, was Mr. Mecole Hardman. Was able to get right past the secondary for 1 deep touchdown and had a second one so close to being a score, but wasn't able to bring it in. I think he probably should have caught it. Mahomes could have put it a little bit better, but you know what? You get a hand on it in the NFL, you should probably be coming down with that more times than not. But anyway, 4 catches, 81 yards, and a score. Problem is, though, everyone, you look at the snaps, and it's just still not a situation where I think we can expect too much of this moving forward. He only had 20 snaps, as a true receiver on a passing down. Sammy was at 41, and, Tyree Kill obviously dominated 2 at 39, and we still got DeMarcus Robinson out there with 27. So even though Mecole Hardman had the great game, he was still number 4 in this Chiefs offense in snaps. I have not let go of Mecole Hardman in most of my leagues just this yet, because he truly is the one kind of wide receiver handcuff in fantasy football where if any of Tyreek, Sammy, or DeMarcus Robinson go down, we're going to see big things, because again, it's not like we have these examples of Mecole getting a bunch of targets and touches and not making any good use of it. He continuously does. It's just a matter of getting the snaps on the field to have these opportunities. So clearly Mahomes likes throwing the ball. I hope, as the season progresses, we see them just naturally start to phase him in more. But for the time being, he's still not going to be a recommended starting option more weeks than not. Travis Kelsey, just another good game. He looks so good this year. I was thinking maybe at some point we would see him drop off a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. Caught 6 or 7 targets for 87 scoreless yards. And again, just the yak ability is looking as good as ever. You worry about these tight ends because it's just such a physically demanding position, but, kudos to Kelsey for staying healthy over these past few years and continuing to ball out. So Anthony Sherman caught a nice touchdown, underhanded shovel thing from Mahomes, and they gave him the ball on a 4th and 1 and got stuffed. They've done this before this year. Why are you taking the ball out of Mahomes' hand on 4th and 1? And look, every single coach in Kansas City knows more about football, and they're a little finger than I do. I'm not trying to say say these guys are, too out of the picture. I'm sure Andy Reid and company had a good reason for calling these plays, but I think we should just be done with it. No more Anthony Sherman on 4th and 1. Let the guy block for someone else. As fun as it is to get fullbacks the ball, I just don't know, everyone. Seems a little bit iffy to me. So fun Monday night game. I mean, wasn't, the kind of Rams-Chiefs classic from a few years back that, really captured everyone's imagination, but still a very good one. I think we're looking at likely the two top teams in the AFC, with all due respect, in the Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots. So going to move on to some waiver claim stuff now. Right after we give a quick shout out to our sponsors over here at Underdog Fantasy. If you like fantasy football, you need to be playing on Underdog Fantasy. I love it. Great new fantasy football app, website, app, customer service. Whole thing is fantastic. They're constantly updating and adding new features. So go look up Underdog Fantasy on your app store or go to underdogfantasy.com. Use code PFF after you do to let them know that I sent you. Love to find folks over there at Underdog Fantasy. All right, on some waiver stuff. So, we're going to have more injury information on Wednesday after the practice reports come in, but for now, we at least can look at some of these top ads. I just went on Yahoo and just kind of looked across the general league availability for who's being added the most and who is available in more leagues than not. So some guys I think just. I'm going over about 8 to 10 guys that I think are going to be popular targets in these waiver columns, if we should be buying or selling the hype behind them. So first up, Vikings rookie wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. I'm buying him as a potentially valuable guy moving forward. And look, I don't think he's going to be in your starting lineup, if your entire team's healthy, but with all these injuries and with plenty of bye weeks coming up, he is now the number 2 receiver in this offense. I mean, this was not a situation like tonight where Mecole Hardman just made the most out of his backup role. This was a situation where Justin Jefferson leaped up to be the second wide receiver in this offense. I mean, weeks 1 and 2, only 3 targets in each game, 69% and 54% snaps, because BC Johnson was playing alongside Adam Thielen in 2 wide receiver sets. Justin Jefferson was their slot receiver. That changed this week. It went up to 9 targets and 78% snap rate for Justin Jefferson, working primarily as an outside wide receiver, not in the slot. And accordingly, BC Johnson only played 8% snaps, and Chad Beebe jumped up to 34% in the snaps. So, a lot of numbers there, but just all you need to know. When they're out there now on the field, it's Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Previously, it was Thielen and BC Johnson. This is a 2 tight end heavy offense with Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith. So now is the season to take a chance on Justin Jefferson. The guy looked great out there. I mean, caught 7 of 9 targets for 175 yards and a score, showed contested catch ability, yak ability, and really looked like one of these. I'm not necessarily comparing him to, Chris Godwin and what's the other good example? Chris Godwin and Tyler Lockett's a good one, I would say, but just these primary slot receivers. And, there are other guys like, Russell Gage or Cole Beasley that, okay, maybe they can't win quite as often on the outside. But I think Jefferson could be more in that Godwin mold where, we don't need to really worry about where they're lining up on the field. They're a baller. They're going to make plays. So, I think anytime you can get a player in this Vikings offense, the targets are going to be a little bit more inconsistent than we like. I mean, even playing from behind in these first 3 weeks, Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown 30 pass attempts in a game, but it's a talented player as the number 2 wide receiver and potentially the number 2 pass game target as a whole in this offense moving forward. So I am fine, spending. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of fab on Justin Jefferson, but I don't know, $15, $20, 20%, something like that seems reasonable for a guy that, again, can provide you some potential spike weeks moving forward. Running back, Rex Burkhead. 3 touchdowns last week, team high 46% snaps. Sony Michel was at 38%, JJ Taylor 22%. Honestly, Sony, to me, looked like the best running back out there in that game. And I'm not a Sony stan by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think he's looked very good at all over the past few years, but he looked damn good on Sunday. And, credit to him for putting it together. I know Damian Harris is eligible to come off the IR here starting week 4, but Sony's playing well. And, I looked today because I think sometimes yards after contact can get inflated. A guy, just breaks a tackle at the line of scrimmage and runs for 70 yards. He's going to have a really high yards after contact per attempt, even though maybe a lot of it came on 1. So I looked at who has the highest percentage of carries with at least 2 yards after contact in 2020. And the top guys before the Monday night game were Chris Carson, Austin Eckler, David Montgomery, Darrell Henderson, and Mr. Sony Michel. Shout out to both Montgomery and Michel, who are more or less, written off after some really rough 2019 seasons. Both guys are playing some great ball. But, yeah, back to Rex. No, I'm not buying this one. It's just the role change of the week, and it wasn't like he was just featured heavily over these guys at the 1 yard line. It was a week where Cam didn't get his usual touches, and James White was still out, dealing with his losses in the family. So really, Rex is fine if James White remains out, but once James White gets back in, it's going to be a no for me. I mean, Rex with James White, since he joined the Patriots in 2017, is averaging 8.7 PPR points per game in 3 games without, 20.9. James White with Rex is at 12 points per reception per game in 15 games without. He's at 16.6. So both guys become more than viable options when the other is out, but when we get that muddled, 4-back committee, particularly now with Cam back under center, providing way more of a rushing threat than Brady ever did, it's going to be a lot more tough for rushes to come by. So, hey, I mean, Rex next week, if James White is confirmed again out, he might be in that upside RB3, maybe even RB2 borderline, like 25, 26 or something, but it's still a fluid situation. And again, if James White is back, Rex is not going to be a recommended start. T. Higgins is kind of in that Justin Jefferson mold where I think we can feel better about taking a chance on him, because it wasn't just the Mecole Hardman big game with still the same amount of snaps. He actually took over for John Ross as a starting receiver in this offense. Only played 22% snaps in week 1, then up to 65% in week 2, and 79% in week 3 with 9 targets. He only has a long of 18 this year. He's only averaging 5 yards per target, but I think that's a little more indicative of the struggles the Bengals have had, slowing down opposing pass rushes and just in general, being able to get the ball downfield to this point. So, the 2 scores were great, and him and Burrow have shown some good chemistry. I love the fact he's wearing, the Ocho Cinco 85 out there, and, I don't think enough receivers these days are wearing numbers in the 80s. Let me be the old man that yells at the cloud. But, Burrow has the most dropbacks in the entire league. Right now, there's going to be some production for all 3 of, Higgins, A.J. Green, and Tyler Boyd. It's not going to be the most consistent. The Bengals are going to have some duds. I think one of the lessons from kind of that Gardner Minshew performance last week and that letdown is that with these teams that we know are going to finish with 4, 5, maybe 6 wins, we can't be too confident in their weekly upside, but we do at least know in this sort of pass happy offense Higgins can provide some value. So again, as a bench spot where you might need a week or 2, you can do worse than a talented player that has an every down role like Higgins. Nick Foles, dropping dimes out there. I don't think he's a viable redraft 1 QB league starter at the moment, because you look at their schedule. Up next, the Colts defense that has allowed the fewest passing yards in the league right now. And they got the Buccaneers. After that, it gets more reasonable. Panthers, Rams, Saints, and Titans. But even then, I think, more 2 QB league target. He looked great out there. He could have had legit 5 touchdowns in the second half if A-Rob had, not let that contested catch get picked. And Anthony Miller also dropped one between the numbers. But, I just think we've seen enough from Foles over these past few years that, he can put together these hot stretches, but to kind of expect consistent top 10, top 12 production out of the gate in an offense that, still isn't exactly overwhelming with playmakers might be a little bit extreme. So, for 2 QB and super flex leagues, like, great, let's do it, pick on these good matchups when they arise. But otherwise, I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. Andy Isabella, so he falls in the Mecole Hardman camp of something that we should not really expect to keep going. Caught 2 touchdowns last week, and he's been great throughout his short career in Arizona. He made my preseason article list for who's every team's most underused player, but he was only at 40% snaps last week. Keyshawn Johnson was actually the one that stepped in and played the more full-time role with Christian Kirk out. So hopefully you would like to think that a guy that's caught 15 of 20 targets for 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, 15.2 yards per target. And, I understand it's a little bit inflated by a few big plays, but at some point, you got to give Isabella credit for making those big plays. So you would hope that the talent's going to win out eventually. But as we've seen, with Mecole Hardman over these past 2 years, not always the point. And I don't want to keep picking on Mecole Hardman. I got to come up with a different adjective for this type of player. But I do think Isabella is someone that's not going to be worth going back to, even if Christian Kirk remains out, he's going to be a thin play more weeks than not. Alan Lazard, this is one where I think we should feel pretty good about because, okay, even if Devontae Adams comes back soon, it doesn't look like he's going to be out all that long. Seemed pretty close to playing Sunday night. Rodgers is just absolutely balling. This offense looks great. Taking the L early, maybe they just regress and, end up becoming like this, the kind of 8-18 that we all thought they were destined to come back to. And you know what? I didn't think they could maintain that 10-1 record in 1-score games from last year. They got one on a Sunday night, but they might just not need him a lot of time because this is your league's number 1 scoring offense right now after 3 weeks. And again, super high play action rate. They're doing great. And you look at this upcoming schedule, you got the Falcons, the Bucks are tough, and then you get the Texans, Vikings, 49ers. We'll see if they're healthier by then. The Jaguars, it's It's a situation where if Adams remains out, okay, we're talking about Lazard as potential, wide receiver 2. And if Adams comes back in, okay, he's still going to be this boom or bust upside wide receiver 3, the way Rodgers' offense is operating. So these are the types of players we want to have on the bench. And, because, okay, you're not going to feel great about playing Lazard until we get a couple more of these performances. I get it. But you don't want it to be a situation where, you just can't even find the guy in the field. We want guys like Lazard, like Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins now, where at a minimum, they're out there running the routes and they have a chance to, get the ball, even if the plays aren't, being actively designed for them with the more true number 1 in their offense. Just 4 more people to get through here. Jimmy Graham. I'm selling it. I'm out. Kudos to him for catching 3 touchdowns already, but he's averaging, 5.7 yards per target, career worst, 55% catch rate. Cole Kmet, their second round pick, is, splitting the snaps with about 30%, and Graham's at 70, so it's not even like a true full-time role. I just think tight end is so deep as it goes. I mean, we've seen this story with Graham. He's making good contested catches, but, it's not like his athleticism has come back. So, give me a tight end that's not turning 34 in a few months. Brandon Aiyuk for the 49ers. So he does seem to have a pretty solid full-time role, 72%, 73% snaps in back-to-back weeks. But here's the problem. Kendrick Bourne is still at 83% snaps. Like, his role hasn't changed. So Aiyuk is just playing the Deebo Samuel role right now. And Deebo's coming back soon. So, Aiyuk truly, 3 carries, 31 yards and a score with 8 targets, 5 catches and 70 yards. Like, that is the Deebo Samuel role. And, okay, they drafted him in the first round. And maybe it's going to be more of a split thing between him and Deebo, which is going to hurt Deebo. But either way, I think behind Kittle in this run-first offense is going to be, sparingly enough and inconsistent enough, as we saw last year with Deebo and Sanders. They can put together big games because Kyle Shanahan can, let anyone put together big games. But, Trent Taylor and Sanu still plenty involved. I just think that's a situation where Aiyuk took advantage of there not really being many solid pieces in the offense other than Jerick McKinnon, and he was kind of featured accordingly. But once we bring back Kittle and Deebo, we're probably going to see, a little bit lesser role for him, even if he continues to make the most out of the opportunities. Kind of similar thing with Jeff Wilson here, where, Jerick McKinnon did dominate touches until mop-up time. I mean, you go to the early fourth quarter when they had a 29-9 lead, McKinnon had 18 combined carries and targets. Jeff Wilson was only at 5, and he only finished with 30% of the snaps. JaMychal Hasty at 8%. McKinnon did get a ribs injury, though. And look, if he's going to be out and Mostert's going to be out and Coleman's going to be out, then okay, yeah, Jeff Wilson's next guy up, and now all of a sudden we can kind of slide him into that 50% plus snap and Kyle Shanahan RB1 role, and that's going to be a good thing to have if you're a fantasy manager. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to be enough if Mostert and or McKinnon get back. I still don't think Wilson's going to have enough touches, in a more not quite so positive game script situation. Wilson is solid. I mean, he scored a lot of touchdowns and not that many touches last year, and he's doing it again in 2020. But I just think, unfortunately, he's just not quite high enough on the depth chart once these other guys come back. And last one here, Carlos Hyde. He is the next man up, and if Chris Carson does have a severe leg injury, it doesn't sound that way. It sounds like that he does have a chance to play as early as this week. So, if Carson is out, then okay, Hyde could be a plug and play, but it's not going to be the same Chris Carson role. We're already seeing that now, where Hyde's at 26% snaps, but Travis Homer's at 18%. And, Hyde's had 16 carries, so only 8 for Homer, but they both had 3 targets. So Carson, the great role he's been having is almost like 60-70% snaps in all the pass down work. But, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Carson's sidelined, that they also make their rookie 4th round pick, DJ Dallas, involved, and he's more of a pass catcher than arguably either of these guys. So a situation where it's, like a lot of these running backs around the league, and the Giants and these committees, we talk about this all the time. Just because one guy gets hurt doesn't mean we should expect the backup running back to immediately have that role. So, on an offense, Seahawks offense that, is letting Russ cook and throwing the ball more than ever, I don't think Hyde is going to have enough overall touches to, flirt with that RB2 territory if Carson misses time in week 4. That is going to do it, everyone. Want to give one more quick sponsor shout out. Monkey Knife Fight. All first-time depositors at Monkey Knife Fight that put $20 in their account while using promo code PFF, you get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. So listen, if you want a PFF subscription, just go to Monkey Knife Fight, pay $20, and you get the $40 value, and then you can use the $20 to go play the games on their website, the DFS and prop games. So hey, there's a good chance that you could turn that $20 actually into money and then have free PFF on the side. So PFF Edge annual subscription for a $20 deposit at Monkey Knife Fight. That's going to do it for the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Everyone, thank you for listening. As always, I'm Ian Hartitz. We're coming to you with new episodes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday throughout the season. We were going to have a fun 16-game preview with Dwayne McFarland up on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, I'll be talking to Action Network's Chris Raybon with some of your start-sit questions and also top DFS picks. So good stuff coming up. Hope you all enjoyed this Monday night game. And until next time, take care.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.